Liv. I'm your student, so you probably know my name. But I'm here to talk about vaccines as my genetic technology for Unit 1, project number 3. Now, I mostly chose vaccines because it is a genetic technology that I'm interested in, but also because I really, really wanted to try to explain immunology because I learned it a couple of years ago, and since then I've loved it and really wanted to try to illustrate the best I can. So we will start with what vaccines are. Vaccines are obviously things you get shot into your muscles every couple of years when you're a child, and maybe once or twice when you're an adult. But what they do is they protect us from diseases and illness. Now, there are 5 main different types in Canada of vaccines. Now, these types are called live attenuated vaccines. Those are the ones that I'm going to be talking about in this assignment. Those ones we use them for like measles and chickenpox, and we only have to get them once or twice, but we do get some side effects afterwards, like coughing and stuff, which is unfortunate, and that's one of the reasons we have the other 4 types. Now, the other 4 types are inactive vaccines, which just means that the thing that harms us is basically killed off in the process of making it. And then there's also subunit vaccines, toxic vaccines, and then conjugated vaccines. Once again, those 4 aren't really necessary. They're all 4 separate things. They don't really matter, but I will talk more about the live attenuated ones. So the live attenuated ones, basically the antigen within it is weakened to the point where it doesn't really matter to our immune system. So we still respond as though we're being attacked and as though it's going to hurt our body, but it doesn't actually hurt us. And that's how it works, because if it did hurt us, we wouldn't obviously want to have it. Now that we know all those, let's talk about what actually happens when you get a vaccine. Not just like, going into the doctor's office when she brings out the needle and then you get terrified because vaccine's scary, needles are scary, and seeing your skin punctured scary, but what happens within you, because when you leave the office and you just, go driving on your way and pretend like it didn't happen, that is actually when your immune system begins to work the hardest. So what happens, I'm going to get out of the sun, move this, and we're going to talk about what actually happens. Firstly, let's establish some of the vocabulary. Let's see, this is going to be our pathogens. Excuse my terrible drawing skills. They're going to be frowny faces. Now, pathogens are the diseases, the viruses, everything that hurts us. Now, specifically the things that connect, or the things that are like carrying it, are called antigens, and that's these things. And then on these antigens connected to it, I will put it as black, will I? Yes. Those are called epotypes. Wait, let me check. Just to check. I think they're called epotypes. I'm very, very bad at memorizing epitopes. So epitopes are connected, and that's what's actually sort of like, you can think of it as a lock. So later we'll talk about B cells and lymphocytes and everything like that, and that's the key to these locks. But locks are very particular, and these epotypes they have a specific genetic coding that will only work with specific types of cells in your body. I'll explain that later though, because I know it's confusing right now. So that's what they are. And then we've got, let's make these guys blue. So we've got 2 types of lymphocytes. Now lymphocytes are B cells and T cells. This is sort of what reacts to the immune system being activated, or they activate it. They do different roles that I'll once again explain later, but we'll draw it as such. So we've got a B cell, so it'll be a B cell, and then we've got a helper T cell, because there are different types of T cells. And then we also have green, we'll have phagocytes. Now phagocytes are just white blood cells that digest or that sort of absorb pathogens, and that's what alerts everybody. But there are different types of phagocytes. We're just going to use the dendritic cells because they're the funnest to draw, the most fun to draw here, like that. And so it's just white blood cell, absorbs, does all that fancy stuff. And then is there any other vocabulary we need to know? I'll talk about cytokines and stuff later. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory. So basically, the story begins. All of these pathogens enter your body, and of course, you want to react to this. Now, while this guy goes around your blood system and tries to just infect and take over and control, at some point, it's going to run into either B cell or dendritic cell. It's going to have to run into both, actually, to start what we call the humoral immune response. But I'll explain that as we go. To be clear, this is the adaptive humoral response because the first step of our immune system is called the non-specific or innate response. And then there's the adaptive response, which is what we're covering. And then within the adaptive response, there's the humoral, which is inside of bloodstreams, and then also the cell-mediated, which is inside of a cell specifically. So here's the adaptive humoral response. Okay, so these pathogens are going along, and all their epitypes are sort of directing, trying to grab onto things. And at some point, it's going to get to a dendrite cell. Now, dendritic cells don't actually need to have a specific key to look at this and just absorb it. They're going to absorb the entirety of this, all of the antigens, and they're at the same time, so I'll take the red and I'll do this. It's inside now. At the same time, they're going to put the genetic material for things like T cells to look at on their MHC2 complexes. Now, MHC2 stands for major histocompatibility, and that's just basically a stage where it presents all this genetic material that they're deeming as a threat or just sorry, my dad walked in the room, as you can see by the shadow. Anyways, yeah, so it's displayed on this platform, and the T cell is where the T cells come in. So the T cells come in, and they're looking around for any sort of thing that they find would deem weird. But the thing about T cells, this is the key I was talking about, is that they have very specific, oh, that's inverted. Yikes. They have very specific, I'm so bad at drawing, very specific receptors. And their receptors, this T cell and this T cell, are definitely going to, or almost certainly going to have different genetic material that they're looking out for. So, for example, this one might be the white one, but this one might be only looking for this type, except that sort of looks like that. So it might be only looking for this type. So once it finds one of these helper T cells that are matching the correct thing, they will bind. They will basically set the alarm for things to be cautious, but they're not going to actually set off any immune system, because to set off the immune system, we need to have both a dendritic, a phagocyte, and a B cell that have been activated. So these, this is now combined. This is out of the picture, and it's sort of just aware that there's something going on, but they're not sure if it's something that's bad for us or if it's just a natural thing that we've eaten, you know? Yeah, so that's where B cells come in, because B cells are here, and B cells have very specific receptors as well. Their receptors are called antibodies. Now, you may have heard about antibodies. They're my favorite part. Always love talking about antibodies. One time in a doctor appointment, I forgot the word, and I was devastated because I wanted to flex on them with my knowledge, but I forgot all those terms, and so I was just devastated. Anyways, so they have specific antibodies. Say, for this, the sake of this, the specific antibody is actually going to be looking for, well, actually probably not the right place, it's going to be looking for this specific antigen. So when it finds it, which is this, it's going to bind to it. Once again, like you've never seen anything bind to it. It's just, and it's not going to let go, and it's going to yell for any T cells to come and check it out. And then when the T cells come and check it out, at some point, once again, the right genetic material, the right T cell with the genetic receptors for the specific antigen will find it, and it will say, oh crap, this isn't supposed to be here. Now we know that B cells and dendritic cells are out for the look of these things, and if they're upset, I should be upset, and the whole immune system should be upset. So they have the power to make everybody asexually reproduce, just divide and conquer, and figure this out. What happens is the B cell, I'm just going to delete this because we need to sort of make more space, but the B cell over here, oh my god, that's so bad, is going to split up into either a memory B cell, which is, sorry, my parents are talking. I guess this is one thing about quarantine that's bad. So it's either going to make memory B cells, which are exactly like those B cells, and they're just going to stick around in our immune system for years and years trying to find these. And keep in mind that T cells and B cells, they're like 400 billion each in the your particular immune system. So it's insane how many there will be for this specific antigen now that it's come in contact with it. And then the other one is actually just like, it's called effector or B effector cells, but actually people usually call them plasma cells. And what they do is they just push out antibodies into your bloodstream at such a rate that you just have them floating around everywhere. And it's specific antibodies only for this antigen, just to be clear. So this is B powerhouse, essentially. But it will be like, oh, one's here, just everywhere, bro. And then I don't remember what color I used. I think I used green. Nope, that was dendrites. Okay, well, now we're using pink. So then for helper T cells, that's sort of different, pretty much the same. We've got memory helper T cells, which will do the exact same thing as these guys here. They'll just go around patrolling, looking for it, and they'll have the specific receptors, so they can't pick up anything else up. They'll be exactly as if it were cloned, because it is cloned essentially, because asexual reproduction only means that they have 100% of the same DNA, which means that obviously it's the exact same. What is a clone? So it's a clone. And then the other ones are effector T cells. And what effector T cells do is they release something called cytokines. Now these cytokines, little guys that are essentially the alarm bells of the immune system. So what they do is they go around to cells and they're like, holy crap, guys, we're gonna die. Please, like reproduce. If you come in contact with this specific antigen, just start reproducing, like gearing up, making effector cells, making memory cells, do everything you can, get it out. And then that will call over what we call killer T cells. And killer T cells ultimately do the killing, and along with white blood cells, so phagocytes, things like that. That's what will happen, and all these antibodies will flake down the problem. T cells will come in, deal with them, and that's what happens. But let's talk about how this vaccine led to this, because it's really important to know that if we just sort of came in contact with this pathogen outside of a controlled substance like what they give us in vaccines, where it's not actually going to harm us, it's going to give us a cough, but it's not there to actually give us the full symptoms. So when we take vaccines for chickenpox, it's not going to give us chickenpox, it's going to give us some other small symptom, maybe at most. But our body is going to respond as though it's giving us chickenpox, and it's going to make all these cells so that next time we get it, when we do come in contact with somebody with it, that we can attack it easily and get rid of it as though we didn't even ever have it. Yeah, and that's how vaccines are always going to work, or always work currently, obviously. And for some of the booster vaccines, like the ones that are, what are they called? Let me see. They're called inactivated vaccines. Those guys, we need a couple of them because this response isn't going to be as strong with something that we don't see as a threat. So we're going to make a couple, but it's not going to have a full immune response. It's just going to have, partial one. So that's essentially what a vaccine is. Without them, we would be very susceptible to many diseases and pathogens that would just infiltrate our body easily and could potentially kill us. If not, we're just going to get very ill. And that's why it's really important to stay updated with your vaccine. Okay, goodbye. Good talking to you. Sorry if this is very long. Well, now I don't know. Okay, bye.